So this is one of those weeks where, as a pastor, you prepare your sermon and you think you know what you're going to talk about, and then world events happen. And it just kind of changes everything that you thought you wanted to talk about has changed. So I'm going to talk a little bit about church history. 501 years ago, on October 31st, Martin Luther nailed 95 Theses on the door in Germany. What he did changed the church forever. And we still see those effects today. Throughout church history, about every 500 years, there's a new reformation within the church. Because usually the church at that point needs to change. Folks, we are at that 500-year mark. We're 1 year past that. We need to find a reformation within our church. We need to to change the way that we do worship. We've been doing worship like how we do today almost for 500 years. Yes, and there was years where the church boomed, especially in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Our churches were bursting at the seams. We didn't know what to do with all the kids we had. Well, folks, it's not working anymore. We don't have the children. We're not bursting at the seams like we were 30, 40 years ago. And I believe here, if it's not already happening, there is a reformation going on. That we're going to see a big change. It might not be somebody like Martin Luther, one person. It might be a movement that comes along that will change the church and to change the church structure. And one of the things that we have to be, as followers of Christ, to be willing to change as the church changes. Now, did everybody in Martin Luther's time, were they all happy that Luther wanted to change the church? No, the Pope at the time was not very happy with Martin Luther. He kicked him out of the Catholic Church, and wow, he even put a death threat on him. They wanted Luther dead because of what Luther was doing. Now, not saying that that's what we need to be doing. Please don't do that. If we see a reformation going on in the church, let's celebrate that. And I think in our church here in Sealer, we are seeing a change. This summer we did our strategic planning. And we do strategic planning. Sometimes we think, well, we're going to do this. Oh, great, dandy, we did it. It's over with. But you know what? I'm seeing us stepping out and actually living into this plan that we have put forth before the church. That plan is not just to sit in these four walls, but to get out in the community. To get out and to show Christ's love to everyone. And not to sit in here 1 hour a week, hoping that and praying that people will come to this 1 hour. I think the reformation that we're going to see is that church has to become not just a Sunday activity. It has to become something that we do 24/7, 365 days a year. Oh yeah, well, trust me, some years they do sound that long. We have to find a way to change. We have to find a way so that we don't have to get up here and think about and pray for those families that have been brutally killed. Or we see people sending bombs to kill our leaders or injure our leaders or to scare our leaders, whatever the intention, what it might have been, doesn't matter. This stuff can't happen and continue to happen, and it's us as Christians that are the ones that can step in and make a difference. But if we're not out in the communities living the way that Christ has taught us, then we can't make a change. If we just sit in here on Sunday for an hour, listen to me dwell and talk, we're not going to make a change. And I tell you what, I'm tired of waking up on Sunday or any day and looking at my phone and seeing that there's been another murder. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. And we've got to find a way as followers of Christ to live into what Christ taught us. And hopefully we know what that is, because I preach it every Sunday, is love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So simple, but so complicated. Then we get into the question, who is our neighbor? I actually was online, and I know I'm not supposed to be online arguing theology, but I was arguing, or not arguing, I just put out we need to love our neighbor, and one of my friends said, well, who's our neighbor? And I explained who I thought our neighbor was, and he disagreed. I think our neighbor is anybody on this planet, the 600 or 700 billion people that live on this planet. This other person disagreed with me. He said anybody that I don't like is not my neighbor. If we live that way, are we living the way Christ liked? Did Christ just go out to the Jewish people and talk to them? No. He went out to the Samaritans. He went out to the Gentiles. Yes, he came first for the Jews and then for us, but he came out to everybody. He sought us out. He still seeks us out. If we don't believe our neighbor is everybody on this planet, it's just the people that we like, then what good are we doing? Jesus even said if you hang around people that you like and you have things in common with, it does you no good. And the question, if you didn't notice, the question that Jesus asked the blind man was the same thing he asked James and John last week. Does anybody remember what we talked about last week with James and John? Yeah, they wanted power. They wanted somebody, one of them wanted to be on the left hand and one of them wanted to be on the right hand of Jesus when Jesus ascended, or even before he ascended, because they still thought he was going to be a conquering king like David. So they wanted to have power. Jesus asked the blind man in our reading today the same question. So what do you want? What do you want from me? What did the blind man want? He wanted to see. Something that we all have, that we all strive to have. And those that don't have sight will probably tell you, yeah, that's something I wish I could have back or have. He wanted to see. He could see what Jesus was talking about. The disciples were blind. They didn't see what Jesus was talking about. And Mark, in the gospel, if you read it, you'll read right before the story about James and John. It's about a blind man seeking sight. And right after it, there's a blind man seeking sight. I don't think that was when Mark wrote his gospel, that was an accident. Are we blind, and do we need to see? And what would we ask from Jesus? And if Jesus were to ask each and every one of us, what do you want from me? How would you answer that? I know how I would answer it. I would answer that I want world peace. That I want to see that when we say our neighbor is the 6 billion people on the earth, that we really mean it. And that's what I'd hope I would ask. Because if any of you have seen the movie The Green Mile, John Coffey is talking to Tom Hanks, and he says to Tom Hanks' character, he goes, "Boss, I'm tired." When I wake up and I read this stuff, I say to Jesus, "Boss, I'm tired." But then I'm reminded, when we go into Hebrews, and we read what we read this morning, that every other priest, pastor, pope, bishop, they're all going to die. I'm going to die someday. There's one that is alive and will continue to live, and that is Jesus Christ. He is the one that we need to be focused on in our walk. He's never going anywhere. He's not leaving us. Even in this time where we think, oh my gosh, how can I go on? But I have a high priest that I know went to the cross for me, went and died for me and took away my sins. And now he sits at the right hand of God, who looks out for me. He looks out for all of us, the 600 people on this, 6 billion people on this planet. That is where our hope comes from. And I think that's what the Reformation we need, is that we need to put our focus back on Christ. Because if we don't, then why are we doing Christianity? Why are we doing religion in the first place? Because if you're doing it just to make yourself feel good, it's not what we're here to do. We're here to take care of the world that we live in. To follow the one and the perfect Son that lives forever and ever. A lot of prayer needed to be done. I went to a pastor's meeting this week, around just clergy, or elders, licensed local pastors, and certified lay pastors, and we were talking about the Methodist Church. And if some of you haven't heard, the Methodist Church is struggling to find our identity. And are we going to stay together, or are we going to split? And I think the Methodist Church has lost our way because we've taken our focus off Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, and put it on ourselves. We need to stay focused on that right there, the cross. That is what keeps us united. That is what keeps us reminding us of the work that needs to be done. And this morning, when I was praying, the Holy Spirit put upon my heart, this is what we need to do. So, I'm going to ask you to let me know what best fits for you. But what I'm going to start doing, and I haven't picked a day, but we're going to meet one time in the morning and one time in the evening so everybody has a chance to come. But we're going to come into the church for, it might be an hour, it might be 15 minutes. But we're going to pray not only for our denomination, not only for our church, not only for our nation, but for each other. Prayer is a powerful tool. And the one thing that I want to do is make sure that we're praying. So there's going to be more information coming out. I said there's just something this morning. Not only that, Kevin mentioned it to me a couple weeks ago, and I kind of put it in the back burner, but the Lord brought it back upon my heart today this is what we need to do. Instead of arguing and fighting about where our denomination is going, we're going to pray for where our denomination is going to go. We're going to pray for our nation. We're going to pray for each other. We're going to get down on our knees like we need to and continue to do the work that Christ wants us to do. And the first thing we need to do is pray about it. So keep my emails open. We're going to start this. We need to be praying for each other, for our church, for our nation, for our world, to make the changes that we're seeking come true. Amen.